Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk all things BYU, Big 12, conference realignment, and all that good stuff. And with us tonight, we've got Adam. Glad to have
Trevor.
you. Yeah, just sorry for the circumstances, though. So Adam and I had actually had scheduled a time to get together and record a video talking about basketball, breaking down this last season, what's going to go on in the off season, and expectations for for next year. But obviously, all of that has changed with Mark Pope being hired as the next head coach at Kentucky. And so we're seeing all the ripple effects of that now, which is crazy because I had actually had in my thoughts for when we got together to say something along the lines of, man, I'm glad Calipari's staying at Kentucky because that's what it looked like. I don't think Mark Pope would get the job, but I don't want to find out. Well, turns out he did get the job. So it was, it is what it is. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this just because of the speed at which it has happened.
Yeah, it is crazy the past 24 hours where he came in as kind of a dark horse candidate, and then they were zeroing in on him, and then all of a sudden, here we go. For BYU, we're over the cliff. We're in free fall right now, and we won't know our fate for a while to see what happens in the portal, what happens with the players, who's our next coach. I mean, we're completely in limbo over the next few days. It's really going to be impactful to the program. I'm super happy for Mark Pope. Love him. Thought he was a fantastic coach. Just thrilled that he gets that opportunity. I'll be a huge Kentucky fan, and don't blame him at all for taking the dream job there at Kentucky. It's so cool for him. But it really is devastating for the program to be in a spot where we were ready to compete in the greatest basketball conference in the country, and now so many question marks. Who's going to be at the helm? We'll get to that later on, but it's just turmoil for the program, and you hate to see it.
Yeah, because you've had the feeling like this year, okay, we overperformed, but we really had something established, something started here, and felt like, okay, we overperformed throughout the season. Obviously the tournament was a big letdown, but you felt like with that core together, we're bringing in more depth, some high star recruits. Jackson Robinson, for some reason, is even talking about coming back for one more year, not going to the draft, which I ultimately don't think he will, or should. But if he does, I'll be glad to have him back. But and all that, you felt like, okay, this year was a letdown. We come back with more depth and another year under our belt, kind of proven, know what we're doing, and can go back at it and feel like next year BYU could really go in and go in with that confidence, and we could see what they can do with another year, another crack at it. So that for me is part of it. I mean, it's always a bummer to see a head coach you like and who's had at least some success at your school leave, but it's just the timing just felt like we're just on the cusp of really turning a corner and building something pretty special.
Yeah.
Because I think we said it on a previous video, and I know other people I've talked to, they think of some of their favorite teams over the years, and this is up there with, and it was because they were fun. They shared the ball. There were a lot of players you really like, and it felt like a really cohesive team. It was very entertaining, and they gave me a reason to care again.
Yeah, it really did. It was fun to watch BYU basketball be competitive every game. But I think before we get too much into the weeds, if you take a step back and look at the significance of this, BYU is in an interesting position now because you're in a P4 conference, and if you come out and you're competitive, right, you're not established as a blue blood basketball or football program. And so if you have a couple successful years, you're always at risk for this, to get your head coach poached, to get to get a top assistant poached. That's the position we're in now. It's really precarious. And, if we were in the WCC and had a year like this, Mark Pope is not getting this job. It's because he came in and did this in the Big 12. And so when we have these years, you got to watch out because now our head coaches are going to be prime candidates for these top roles if they're identified as an up and comer, just like Mark Pope. And you hope you get somebody who's, finding that the BYU is their dream job because of the unique opportunity in the faith community or whatever it is. But at the same time, I can't blame a head coach for making a leap to go take a job at a mecca for football or basketball. And so I feel like we're entering a new era where if you have some success at BYU for 2 or 3 years, you're at risk for this now, whereas they didn't look at us like that before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to live with that. And I wouldn't blame any head coach for, there's a handful of true blue blood programs in college hoops, and Kentucky's one of them. And I wouldn't blame any coach for wanting to go get that job, let alone Mark Pope, who played there. And
Yeah.
that that's where his heart is. Like I think he loved his time at BYU. He represented the university and the program really well. But I think in his heart of hearts, it was always Kentucky. I think that
Oh
was
yeah.
has always been his dream job. So for him, it's like, great. I knew he wasn't going to be a lifer. He wasn't Satake. He wasn't going to, this wasn't his ultimate destination. It's just the timing of it. You feel like, oh, with one more year and we do a little bit more, maybe that's enough to really establish something um, truly special and get enough momentum that you can keep bringing in those higher recruits. But so it felt like maybe 1 year and maybe we go to the Sweet 16 or something and
Yep.
have a little more success in the postseason, that it would have, then you would be like, okay, yeah, now maybe
Yeah.
we're more prepared. But this just felt a little soon, and I think
Yeah.
that's why I think it has a lot of us. I think off guard and Kentucky fans, which we'll get to in a moment. I think it has, I think that explains some of their reaction as well. But I want to go through here. I've been on Twitter, so I got on Twitter just really for BYU and college football, basketball news and stuff, and it's paid off because you find all sorts of things. But I love going through this. These chain of events, and which were kind of interesting at the time, but didn't think much of it. But just to see how it all starts with SMU firing their head coach, somehow stealing the head coach from USC, and just the ripple effects here. How
Yep.
it's
The coaching carousel. It's wild.
Exactly. And I didn't really think Mark Pope was going to be on that, but it just, it is. And it also had, this one I thought was hilarious because, had I known this was what was going to happen, I don't think I would have rooted so hard to see Kentucky upset in the first round. I thought it was
Right?
fantastic at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely regret that. But I thought this was interesting with Kentucky.
I loved this one. That was so funny.
you know,
Had the same questions.
Yeah, Baylor felt like God told him to stay at Baylor. Scott Drew to stay at Baylor. But yeah, Mark Pope left for Kentucky. So
Yep, a lot of
does
difficult questions.
definitely raises those difficult questions. I thought this was also hilarious. This is taking that statement made by Drew and just to cross it out and made it appropriate for Mark Pope after the announcement. And this was a little bit of wishful thinking, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
if only. And I think Johnny Linehan, one of our beloved, makes a great point here. If I had no idea Mark Pope, if he is a bishop, but if it means if you got to move to get out of that calling, I understand that. So,
Right.
I like this one because I love. I've had the BYU uniform tracker on before, like talking about uniforms, and it looks like Royal was definitely a much stronger record there than Navy. So, just something
Indeed.
to think about going forward here. But here's one account he posts a lot and says from Joe Wheat. He says, being a BYU fan is rooting for a team that almost always exceeds your preseason expectations, but also falls short of your postseason expectations, which is what we were talking about. It's such a bummer. I feel like we were right there, and then unfortunately came up short. And now, we may not ever get to see what this core is capable of. And this is an example. Last night I was in bed and I was thinking about all this, and I was like, oh no, I got to record now. I wasn't going to because I was tired and I couldn't fall asleep. So I got up and recorded a video. Anyway, I get comments from a bunch of Kentucky fans, and a lot of them look like this, that they're 100% disappointed. I know that you had your eyes on bigger names, but then it says Pope has little no experience, plus he hasn't even won an NCAA tournament game, a horrible hire. I'll not be watching UK again until Pope is gone, and then more, blah, blah, blah. So my point is, that sentiment I've heard. I've stumbled across videos on YouTube. I've read comments and seen other tweets, and it seems like this has really been the Kentucky fan base at large, their reaction.
Yeah, well, you look at the past hires for Kentucky, and they're always bringing in the best of the best coaches with incredible pedigrees, previous Final Four appearances, numerous NCAA tournament wins. And so I get it. I get where they're coming from. And if I'm a huge Kentucky fan, I'm going to think the same thing. Where I'm like, are you kidding me, Pope? But I do think Kentucky is going to be pleasantly surprised. It's a fun brand of basketball, which honestly, in the end, to Kentucky fans doesn't matter. It matters if you win. It matters if you go to the Final Four. And Pope has to prove that. He does. I think he will. I think he'll be successful there. But I can't fault Kentucky fans. I feel bad for them. Kentucky's a championship or bust program, and it's always tough being a fan in those programs because most years are bust, and so it's not always fun to cheer for teams like that when that's your expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not the only one that noticed this. Even Fran Fraschilla says, I don't traffic in Kentucky basketball much during the conference season, but are these people always this whacked? So, I mean, for me, it's I understand it. I think it's shocking. And one video I was watching, I think they made a good point. It was somewhat the speed at which it had happened. So not only did it shock us, but I think it impacted them because it's like there were a lot of candidates out there. They're just coming off of some big name coaches that had, won national titles to, all of a sudden Mark Pope, who was kind of a dark horse candidate, to jump into the lead that quickly
Yep.
to happen. And so I think, that may have led to part of it, but you look at some of these other blue blood programs, you got UNC, Duke, the coaches that they hired after losing Hall of Famer coaches have less head coaching experience than Mark Pope and were less proven than him. And so I don't think it's that wild. Now, it is a gamble. I mean, the reality is that he doesn't have, all the experience, all the credentials that a lot of times you expect to see at a blue blood, but you never know. I mean, a lot of people don't until they do. I mean, you look at Dan Hurley, you look at, a lot of these guys that they kind of come out of nowhere and then they become the next head coach. Or you also have the examples of people who, I used the example last night, a school hiring someone who played for them to come back as a head coach. You look at Frost at Nebraska and had a lot of success at a G5 program, and then got big leagues with all the resources in the world and couldn't do it. And so there are times when it backfires, and you don't know, but it very well could with Pope. But I do think that he will probably exceed these initial expectations from Kentucky fans.
Yeah.
Another tweet here, Robbie Triano, who has no affiliation with, he covers Big 12, has no affiliation with BYU, but he has since adopted BYU as one of his teams. And so I love it, for the dedication he has, but says the only reason that Kentucky fans are upset for hiring Mark Pope is because it wasn't the big name. If they turned on the tape for 1 minute and watched BYU's offense with basically 0 first round or even any round NBA draft picks, they would shut up. Mark Pope will be great. So he has even more confidence in Mark Pope than I do. But, that's the thing. Over the last 5 years, you talk about it's a program where it's really, you got to win it all or bust. And Kentucky, what have they really done over the last 5 years? I had it and it's in another window. But over the last 5 years, they haven't even played for the SEC championship, let alone, I think during the COVID year, maybe, but they didn't, I think they won the regular season. And so they haven't won the regular season title other than that COVID year, or won the conference tournament. And, they've had some high seas, but they've had some early bounces. And then I think as far as they've made it is the Elite Eight, which is still, I mean, obviously I would take the Elite Eight, but, so and that was one time, I think. So it's not like they've been like competing at the highest level right now. I mean, for the last several years, they've really been, he talks about the big names. They've been, a lottery draft pick factory, but have they been anything beyond that? They get a lot of talent.
Yeah, and that's why Calipari isn't there. I mean, right? He walked away because it's championship or bust in the past 5, 6, 7 years. They haven't been to the caliber that they're accustomed to. that really he should be at in their estimation. I think it's a mistake to run Calipari out of town. The guy's amazing. But and maybe he passed his time in Kentucky and he wasn't going to regain the prior magic. But um, I, I think programs do that too often, where there's a lot of explanations why somebody hits a skid for a few years. But someone proven like that, I think Arkansas is thrilled to have him, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with him. But regardless, yeah, Kentucky has been great the past little while, and we'll see. I don't think year one Mark Pope is going to go out there and take him to the Final Four, but he'll take him deep into the NCAA tournament, you think, and maybe that's better than the past couple years when they've been bounced in round one.
Yeah, and you think about it, what he's been able to do with fewer resources and as Robbie points out, fewer draft picks and all that. So he'll have the resources, he'll have the name brand, he'll have the recruiting resources and everything that he needs. So anyway, I am done trying to convince Kentucky fans. Mark Pope, I'm happy for him. I think he's going to do great, but doesn't need our defense anymore. This is what he wanted. He's going for it. And so I wish him the best of luck. Anyway, I'm more focused on the players now at this point, and I like this one. Dear Mark Pope, Kentucky does not need the LDS recruits. As we just mentioned, he'll be in Kentucky in order to succeed and win championships. Please leave all of them for all right. So I would second that. So we could go tell the players ourselves tomorrow. I mean, you and I are not in Utah, but the meet and greet.
Hopefully Dallin shows up.
I have no idea if he will. I mean, a lot of them has been kind of negative, like, yeah, I'll go tell him. But I was like, you guys, he's not gone yet. So let's remember,
don't badger him.
and actually, so right now, at least as far as I've seen, it's been Dallin Hall and Ali Khalifa. Ali, he kind of surprised me, but maybe not as much. Dallin Hall, and I even went and looked it up because I didn't even remember. Oddly enough, there was I was able to find an article talking about it that he didn't really grow up a BYU fan. He grew up a Duke fan, and he just kind of supported Utah schools in general. And so I was like, okay, so maybe he doesn't feel the same connection to stay at BYU. But I was like, why? I'm trying to wonder why would he put why so quickly? Why would he jump into the portal without even knowing who the head coaching hire was? And it's either to gauge his value on the market, and he just wants to see what's there. Or I'm also wondering, like, he went pretty quick. Is Coach Pope already trying to pull him away to Kentucky? And he's like, hey, I'm going with him. Like, let's just, tear the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The portal, the players in the portal, to me, right now are the most interesting part because you need the players. Regardless of who's the coach, we got some great players. And if they start to trickle out and you start to see a flood and an exodus, now you've stepped back 7-8 years in program progress, and it's going to be a tough few years. But if we can keep the core together, we'll see. We'll see who the coach is.
Yeah, I think, and if a good enough coach, even if they play a different, a slightly different style of basketball, what I'd like to see is them come in and lean on the strengths of the team that they have, even if over time they start forming a different team more to their style. But we'll get to that too. But anyway, so that'll be interesting to see if he shows or how that will go. I like this tweet. Honestly, I'm just surprised RC Willie is still in business. So,
agreed.
I thought that was valid. And I liked this tweet from Joe Wheat. He says, the good news is I don't think Tom Holmoe has ever made a bad HC hire during his tenure. So
Holmoe's the guy. He's the guy to do this. So it's a good thing we got him around still.
I did see something today that said from somebody that said he was at some other tournament in Florida or something. They saw him and so I was like, well, somebody should notify him that he just lost his head coach. I'm sure he's been working tirelessly to get everything sorted out. But yeah, anyway, so that was a lot to unpack. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to discuss going forward. But tonight I want us to focus on the candidates to replace Mark Pope, because this is the most essential thing. And some of the concerns that I've seen are that I don't know if it's policy or if it just takes us long or whatever, but that the church typically takes a couple weeks to lock down these coaching hires. And I think if that's the case, you could really lose a lot of players to the portal because they're not going to know what's going on, and they have a chance to go test the waters. And then you start getting offers and NIL deals, thrown in your face while you're waiting to find out who the head coach even is. I think it's going to be tough to keep those players. And so that worries me. And then the other question is, I've seen some debate on social media is whether they have to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, because that's generally been the policy. I know that there is a head coach of, women's cross country is not a member. However, I'd argue that men's basketball is a much more visible position. And so that, I don't know if that changes the calculus or not, but I don't know what your thoughts are on those 2 points.
Well, I think we're in a new age, and so yes, speed matters. And historically, BYU has taken a long time. I don't anticipate they would take this long. Homo's really savvy. He knows what he's doing. He's been through this before, and he knows this is a new age with the portal and NIL. And you see that. I mean, you saw Mark Pope moved very quickly. And they went through those Kentucky candidates really quick and then settled on Pope and signed a deal because they're trying to hold on to their players. And so everybody's moving much, much faster. And you saw it in the college football coaching carousel, the same thing, whereas people would take their time, take 2 or 3 weeks. But the Alabama situation, that went super fast. And you saw coaches jumping out like Sarkisian at Texas to say, I'm staying here, I'm staying here. Otherwise, they're going to lose their recruits just because they're associated with maybe going to Bama. And so everything moves way faster nowadays. I don't think BYU takes a couple weeks to do this hire. They've historically taken their time, but so have other colleges. And this is a new era. I think we'll move quick.
That's a good point. I think they went from Alabama to hiring to Washington hired, Arizona hired to San Jose hired, all but within,
like it was 4 or 5 days.
Short order that you finished that whole cycle of that coaching carousel.
It was fast. It was fast. So I think BYU moved quickly. As far as them being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, I don't know that that's official policy. I do think that in this era they would be open to someone who's not, but it would have to be someone who understands the mission of BYU. Athletics at BYU is church standards first, right? Visibility first, and those standards matter more than winning. And BYU's shown that they're committed to that over and over and over again. Is that how you play and how you live and how you win is more important than winning. And so if somebody understands that and embraces that, then no, I don't know that religious affiliation is going to be the driver. But I do think that the school turns first to candidates who are members of the church because they understand the unique standards and the unique expectations of the role. That's much easier to do if you've been a member of the church. But I don't think it precludes someone who's not. And certainly at this point, being in the Big 12, trying to find the best candidate available, I think they would cast a wide net. But in the end, I do think they'll probably land on someone who's a member of the church. As we'll go through the options, there's some good options out there who are members of the church, understand the culture. But there are certainly candidates who are not members of the church that I think would be considered.
Yeah. So having said that, let's take a look at the candidates, which are primarily members of the church. But this was a really good article that was put out last night in pretty short order. He must have had some of this queued up already. But Robbie McCombs on the Vanquish the Foe for for BYU, talking about them and the potential candidates. The top one, which was on everyone's mind, was the first one that came to my mind, was Mark Madsen, but he unfortunately put out a tweet this morning that all but said, quit talking about me for the BYU.
That was too bad.
Summary, what he said.
Yeah. That was, for me, that was, I think, one of the more difficult speed bumps in this whole process, because you feel like with UVU there, you've got kind of a pipeline of people who are ready to jump to BYU. They got head coaching experience. They could be really successful at UVU. That could parlay into BYU. That's what Pope did, right? And so it looked like Mark Madsen was still on that same track. And he was a security blanket where we're thinking, oh, Pope leaves, we've at least got Mark Madsen. Well, no, we don't. He's building the Cal program. I respect him for that. He's been there a year, did some great work in year one. But that was really disappointing, because the silver lining in all this would say, you know what, Mark Madsen may be a pretty darn good coach, and maybe he'll come in and make some noise. Who knows? But once he took his name out of consideration per se, that's where I felt like this is gonna get rocky.
I don't understand that. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, so we don't know, what went into that or whose decision or why. But it just surprises me to go to Cal, that's been kind of notorious for not providing the same resources, the same focus on athletics that it could. And maybe he has those assurances. Plus, they'll be going to the ACC, which is just a weird, precarious situation as it is, versus going to BYU, the Big 12, and playing in that conference. So it just surprised me. And maybe it's the buyout, and the church is like, look, we're just not messing with this. But I think Pope has a buyout too. So can't you, take some of that buyout money,
Yeah,
put it,
I don't know that it's about the buyout. I
I
don't.
don't think so either.
He because he came out and said I'm not coming. I'm committed to Cal. And so I think this is a Mark Madsen decision, and respect him for it. It is what it is. We're gonna have to move on to other candidates.
Yeah. So he would have been a great candidate, would have made a lot of sense. And unfortunately, we're moving on to other candidates. So here we've got Chris Burgess, who is currently a Utah assistant, but he was an assistant under Mark Pope. He followed him around throughout the years. He played at Utah, so he's not traditionally a BYU guy, but he has recruited the state of Utah as well as anybody. From what it says here in the article, from what I understand, that that's something that he's really known for. And he was at BYU at the time that a lot of the core pieces of the team were being recruited, including the incoming commit Colin Chandler, as well as potentially other key players that are currently at Utah that may be interested in going to somewhere else. So he lacks the head coaching specific credential, and so he hasn't coached at any level, let alone at the top level in what is known as the best basketball conference. So that is maybe a question mark, but in terms of recruiting and keeping the team together, he may have the best chance out of any of the potential other candidates out there. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think he is likely going to be the head coach because of all the reasons you mentioned. I do like that he comes from the Mark Pope coaching tree. I would love it if he ran a similar style offense, and who knows how he'd carry that out. But I do like that he worked under Mark Pope for such a long time because I would love to have Mark Pope Jr. in there. I think that's if Chris Burgess turns out to be that, then that's good for us. But as you mentioned, he's unproven. If we do bring him in, I do think he has the best chance of keeping together as much as we can of this team. But you're gonna have growing pains. He's brand new head coach. He's unproven. You're gonna go through 2 or 3 rough growing years with any brand new head coach. And a lot of people on this list would be new head coaches. So um, I, I think he's probably our best one at this point. And you just kind of cross your fingers and hope that he's going to cut it at this level. It's the same thing that Kentucky's doing with Pope, and they said, he's the best one that we've got available. Let's hope he's really got what it takes at this level, and that's what we do with Burgess.
Yeah, and one thing, sorry, I forgot that he had quite a bit more to say down here if you are looking at it. Otherwise, I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to go, for anyone that wants to go check out this article and read it more thoroughly. But um, he does say, one argument against it too is that maybe because he's a Utah guy, if he has some success, maybe you're always worried about him bolting for the Utah job if and when it ever comes open. And I wouldn't use that and he even says he wouldn't use that as a knock against him. And I agree. You and I made that same point about bringing in any of the coaches that we brought in. It's like, if they succeed and they get pulled away, this is what you're saying at the top of the video, then you're just great. That means we've done well.
Yeah,
And you just have to hope that we're able to
yeah,
replicate that, find someone new and do that. And so I wouldn't not hire him because of that. Plus, if he comes and does well and, makes it home, there's no reason why he couldn't want to stay here. So
yep, for sure.
we will see. So yeah, definitely. If it means keeping the core together and continuing to build upon what we've seen this season, then that does excite me without knowing. And that's the one thing. Like you see the impact of a head coach on a team, but it's hard to, especially as spectators, really pinpoint where the assistant coaches are coming in and having their impact. And so it's hard to really have a pulse on that other than, what we hear. Peary is another one. He has an extensive resume. Remember, also not traditionally a BYU guy, though he is from Utah, has been all over the place. I thought one of the interesting things here is that he says he was associate head coach at Texas Tech for one season where he helped them to get the number one Ken Palm rated defense. So I guess he's known more as a defensive guy. Are you very familiar with him?
I am not. And while I think he'd probably be good, he does have a great resume, and did well at Texas Tech. I don't like defense-oriented basketball. So this to me is like pitching triple option in football. And it's just there's a way to play the game that's fun and exciting, and that's the way Mark Pope does it. If we bring in a University of Virginia type strategy where you're just playing lockdown defense and winning 49-45 every night, oh my goodness, let's not go that route. And I'm not saying this guy, that Peary would take that approach, but I definitely favor the offensive-minded candidates over the defensive-minded candidates. But that's just from a fan standpoint.
See, but I'm a huge Pistons fan and love that national championship team right there. So winning games that where they don't score more than it was like I think they had games where they won maybe as low as in the 60s. Back in those times, and I love that toughness. So I love toughness and tough defense. But yeah, when you have this team and see what they do offensively, and that's why I say if it is a more defensive-minded coach or just has a different style, you hope it's somebody that can come in and lean on the strengths of the team that you have, even if you instill more defensive principles or whatever, but still understanding the pieces that are there and what we have. Because man, they were entertaining to watch for sure. Yeah, but it seems like a good potential candidate there, and it looks like he's number 2 on the list. He's one that I've seen elsewhere on lists. And then we have Nick Robinson, another assistant at BYU. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't. What concerns me is the record. He's been a head coach and really not a good record. And not saying you can't turn that around, right? He's been part of the BYU program. He knows the group of players, but that's not the resume I think you want to bring in. You got to bring somebody who either could be a winner or has proven to be a winner. But boy, if you're struggling at that level of basketball, I don't think that's going to be the fit at head coach for BYU.
Yeah, my concern is that it was 4 years. That should have been enough time to at least put together one season. Now, those types of programs, they do schedule, at least from what I've seen, a lot of other programs where they're supposed to lose those games. So there's a lot of games that are built in that are just automatic losses every year. Yeah. But then you go on to move into your conference where you're playing other teams at the same level. And so you'd like to see that record a little bit higher. He is a BYU guy, but that does not necessarily mean that he's ready for the job. But also I wonder how much he'd be is he one of those guys just because he's there? Is he going to be one that can help hold on to the existing players? I don't know. And then Casey Beard, a Houston assistant, another guy who I'm not super familiar with. I have actually been through Parma, Idaho, but other than that,
yeah, not super familiar with him. This one's somewhat intriguing because Houston's been so incredible, and so if you feel like he's somebody that can come in and apply the Houston model for BYU, that's if he can sell that pitch and when he interviews, sure. I could buy into that a bit. I'm not jazzed about it, but maybe. Houston's a really, really impressive program, and so if we can get a little bit of that magic of BYU, that's not a bad thing.
My question is, why isn't he higher on this list? I don't know. Is it just because there's been little to no interest expressed by him in the past, or what? But I think
he's been at Houston since 2014. I mean, that's a long time in one destination. He's pretty settled there. Don't anticipate he's going to make a jump. Maybe that's why. But
you see, like from Baylor, look at how many coaches came from Baylor, and that coaching tree there that stayed even within the Big 12. So I feel like he could follow that model and bring some of that over to BYU. I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems really intriguing if he could, if he's coming from the Kelvin Sampson coaching tree. That to me, at least, warrants a little more explanation. But then we have a couple. I don't want to get too much into these because it doesn't sound like either one is too interested. But there's Kevin Young, who is an associate head coach at Phoenix. And then also Alex Jensen, who is an assistant at the Dallas Mavericks. It seems like both of them have kind of growing careers in the NBA and are more NBA guys. I mean, at this point, it seems tough with the way that transfer portal is and the NIL and dealing with all that. And you're already growing in the ranks of the pros. I don't see the
I don't
appeal.
anticipate much interest. Yeah, I agree.
This is one that I thought was interesting, though. Quincy Lewis, who's a Lehigh High School head coach, which I also saw another tweet. I don't remember if it was in relation to the Mark Pope job or not, but it was an article talking about how some of the new coaches making an impact in college hoops have come from the high school ranks. You look at Hurley from UConn, and that he came up that way, and then Rhode Island, and then got to UConn and stuff. So, there is some precedent for this. I don't know. Does bringing up someone from, he's local, has ties with a lot of these guys, but and had a lot of success in Utah. Does that excite you at all?
Not a whole lot, because I want to see him jump to UVU or SUU somewhere and show some dominance there, and then we'd snatch him up. I don't love bringing somebody from high school to BYU, especially now that we're in a Big 12 program. So if we get to this point and that's the hire, I'm not a huge fan of that. He could be great, but where we're at right now with the program and trying to compete in the best basketball conference in America, don't love hiring a high school coach to come and do that. So he's one maybe you keep an eye on in the future, but it feels like if he can go to a small program and succeed, then we'd be the step after that.
Yeah. Or maybe if you're not bringing him with head coaching, but he came on and as an assistant and then grew into that role in or something at least. But no, I agree. I think, and that probably is the next step for him, is to take on a smaller program and then grow into that. And, maybe down the road, he's somebody. And then wild card, he is a wild card because he is not a member of the church, but he is the person credited with helping design the offense that helped BYU flourish this year. But I've seen that I think he's most likely going with Pope to Kentucky. But what would you think if BYU could snag him?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed. I love that idea. Again, offensive minded, knows the program, knows the players. I was going to say I think he'll go to Kentucky. I mean, the head coach is often going to take some assistance with him, and this just seems like a good fit, especially if he designed this offense that's getting so much attention. So I anticipate he goes to Kentucky. But if BYU snags him back and he heads the program, again, as a fan, I'm excited about that. If he can keep that core group of players together, push forward the success they've had offensively, seems like a good fit.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's great to be in a great offensive mind, but questions to whether, without that head coaching experience, is he cut out for that? But in terms of keeping this team together and really helping kind of continue us on the path we were at, it does seem great. And, maybe he learns along the way, maybe enough of the coaching staff stays intact that they're able to keep building on that. And I thought it was, no, it must have been a different article where I had a few other names, but was there anyone that wasn't on this list that any other ideas that you have?
Not for me. I think the focus has really got to be on Burgess at this point. It just makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe you go Peary, the UNLV assistant, but the ties to the program seems to be kind of an heir apparent now that Mark Madsen is out of the picture. I think that's just sort of the natural progression. But I really hope there's at least some media buzz here in the next couple of days so we can start to anticipate who might fill that slot. What is the team going to look like? Can they go out and re-recruit the players that are now in the portal and keep some of this core together? It'll be an exciting couple of days, but I hope that process starts soon.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to go fast, and the sooner the better, which is why we don't normally record on Friday nights where we head back now, because we're hoping that BYU acts quickly and gets someone in place soon. But you don't want all those players sitting all weekend or going through deep into next week, still not knowing the future of the program. But some other names that I saw thrown out there were Lee Camard, who probably too soon for him. He's assistant, former BYU player, but assistant for the women's basketball team. Saw Jimmer Fredette. I think he's busy at the Olympics. I even saw Andy Reid. Heck, bring him in.
Hey, let's do it. Anytime we get Andy Reid associated with the program is a win, so we'll take him.
Yeah, absolutely. Great offensive mind. I think he could figure it out. So, how many players wouldn't want to come play for Andy Reid?
Right.
It might be a different style of basketball than we're used to, but but anyway, I don't know. I think you're right. It does seem like Burgess is the obvious choice. I'm surprised nothing's been stated at this point. Maybe they're just, really trying to keep things hush hush. And if that's the case, and they're having conversations behind the scenes, I mean,
BYU is good at that. They will. Yeah, they'll be having conversations, and no one's sitting on their hands at this point. Again, Holmo has shown he knows his stuff. If there's anybody we can trust in this process, Holmo's got it, and so they're moving. It's just a question of when can that person reach out to the players and quiet the excitement that's going on right now and try and settle the dust. We'll see.
I'm just wondering if Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith can come in and, make a few phone calls and get the right people in place and make sure there's the funds.
That's what they do best, right? I mean, I don't know why Danny Ainge isn't a candidate. I mean, let's bring the guy in and just create that pipeline to the NBA, get that man associated with the program. Let's do it.
I mean, at the very least, call the players and be like, look, you're not going anywhere. Stay here. We're going to get the right coach in place. I hope they're assuring people.
Those conversations, I'm sure, have happened.
I don't know how many regulations and rules, that's breaking by, with them being, owning and employed by an NBA team. But I hope, somehow they're exerting their influence where they can and getting things right. They need to call up Chandler's mission president to encourage him to make the right choice as he's getting ready to come off his mission. Say, forget about marriage. The one thing I want you to do is go home and. So, anyway, Adam. All right. Well, how are you feeling at this point? Are you still
for BYU basketball? I'm pessimistic. Yeah, it's not going to be great at the end of the day. We'll be bottom third of the Big 12, and we'll consider that a decent season. Even if we keep the core group of players, if we see a mass exodus, you're talking about bottom 2, bottom 3 in the conference. So I'm not optimistic. I think we're probably 2-3 years away from regaining that competitive standing where we were, making the tournament, making some noise. That's if we get the right head coach in there. And so it's disappointing, but you know what? It is what it is. It was a great run with Pope, and this is college basketball. This is what happens.
Hey, we've got Caleb Lohners back on the market, so we can really bring him back. So
let's pull him in.
But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see which guys. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys on the team who obviously, not of our faith, and growing up in Utah aren't necessarily BYU people. They're probably most likely Pope people. Now, I don't know if they're the people he's necessarily going to try to take with him to Kentucky, but I'm sure they'll have interest elsewhere. But then you have other guys like Dawson Baker. Like for him, he's coming from smaller school. This is probably a destination where he wanted to end up.
Yeah.
But some of these other guys, I have no idea. I think Trevin Nell is kind of a BYU guy. I don't know about the rest though, if they're Pope or where it is. And so it'll be interesting. We'll find out where things fall. And even if they are, like, there's no reason to say they can't go elsewhere if a better offer comes around. So it could be bad. Right now I'm pretty like you said, I guess pessimistic is the right word, but there is still that chance, and just the sooner we can get a head coach in place, the happier I'll be. And so we can at least just find out, get
agreed
and move, even if it is everyone leaving, at least then you will know, and it'll give them a chance to start bringing in their guys. So, All right. Well, Adam, thanks for joining me. If you're a BYU fan, hang in there. There'll be
we'll make it
into the tunnel somewhere. We'll make it through. But if you haven't already, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 1,000, so help us get there. A big major milestone for us. And like I said, hang in there. I'm sure it'll all work out. Okay, I'm not sure, but I hope it will. And go Cougs.
Go Cougs.